A very good evening to all our viewers today. Today we have with us a very adventurous social entrepreneur who traveled all the way from the US and now is in Japan pursuing his love for social entrepreneurship and founded Support for Good. Let us all welcome Mr. Andy Cline, founder Support for Good. Welcome, Andy, on the
Hello,
show.
hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. Hello, Harsha. Thank you.
Andy,
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
great.
you're
It's
looking
great to be here.
camera.
Hmm. Um, should I
Yeah,
just
your
start?
camera is
Should I just
facing the other side.
the other side? It's looking right at me,
Yeah,
no?
yeah. Now, if you
Yeah,
could just look in.
yeah. It's kind of off to the side. Here. Okay. So yeah. So I can't
Yeah.
look at
Okay.
you this
Now you're
way, but that's okay. um, yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm glad to join with so many other contributors to the wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated with all these interviews. I think it's really great, and this area of business is well, with corporate sustainability and really businesses that build um, their model around sustainable development goals and that sort of thing is still sort of a new um, field. So it takes, I mean, it's been going on since Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, and so many different projects that in social entrepreneurship, but um, always need new innovation in this area. So I'm happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Andy, on live interaction with global change makers. Now, you have worked in several roles in your career, from media to corporate and now entrepreneurship. What was your inspiration in each role?
Well, in the beginning, I mean, if we went way back on the history of my career, as it were, I started off in activism and kind of a spiritual interest. So I helped found a nonprofit um, after college that was an umbrella organization, and we provided free housing for a lot of other nonprofits or cause related groups that didn't have 501c3 status. So that's sort of something that I've circled back to in Support for Good, but in a more mature form. But I also had an art interest. So to be honest, after losing some battles in activism, particularly around I guess some global development with indigenous groups in different areas, and also the U.S. War machine. I just decided to hang it up, and I went and became dedicated myself to my uh, artwork and did a degree there. And I went and worked in Hollywood, and ended up coming to Japan with a fashion company, actually, which is I never would have dreamed that I would have ended up working for a fashion company, but that's how I arrived here. Um, but we are shaped by our environments. So, the life that I lived and the considerations that I had when I was in the US or when I was in other places aren't the same as when I moved to Japan. So in Japan, I started to, be shaped by the new environment. And what came out of that is a focus more on business. And because, here in Tokyo, it's a very strong business culture, very strong innovation culture. And so it became a creative outlet for me, actually, to find a way to work in business creatively, and then also to come back around to my values that I had held previously. So, um, So Support for Good is really an outgrowth of all of that experience and all those different paths that I took, accumulating it all together into what I'm working on now.
Wonderful, Andy, and it's very inspirational to see your journey. Now, you have been a serial entrepreneur with ventures such as Solar Boom Agency, Support for Good, Dream Drive. What have been your learnings in your entrepreneurial journey and from each of these ventures? What was the inspiration also to start these?
Yeah. Well, even before that, I was a sold my art. So that's where I really started with entrepreneurship. I guess was selling individual works of art that I made. Um, the thing about business is there's always a different type of product or a different service that you're selling, and whatever it is that you're selling, there's a lot of unique factors that go around the marketing that product and selling that product or service. So in all of the different things I've done, I've learned um, that there's opportunities, different unique opportunities in each of those, and there's always challenges. There's not a product that's without challenges, I don't think. I mean, there's probably some. um, you know if you go on the addiction path, you can always sell alcohol or something like that, but anything more sophisticated, there's always going to be challenges. So learning how to sell, learning about different markets, how to develop markets, how to target markets, how to look for opportunities um, when you're researching a business venture, um, and then uh, and then how to take all of those learnings and channel and slowly over time channel that into what you're really uh, passionate about, because I think it takes some learning out in the field, practical knowledge in multiple different, well, not necessarily, but for me, in multiple different sectors and segments of the market before I was ready to kind of integrate everything into the current project. But yeah, um, I love to learn. I mean, actually, if I get a chance to sell anything now, I used to be more hesitant about selling, but now if I have an opportunity to sell something new that's an interesting product, I love to try it just because, I want to learn about what it's like to sell that thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You see, entrepreneurship is 80% selling. So I completely concur. My next question to you is you're presently leading Support for Good. So, what is your mission in Support for Good? What does the company really stands for, and what does it want to achieve?
Yeah, so it is a marketplace. It's really there for empowering shoppers to be able to make an impact while they shop. And the way that we do that is by partnering with nonprofits, and then other e-commerce stores. So, but the ultimate goal is to give shoppers a way to make an impact while they shop. If they're going to normally buy a product, they can buy that same product, but they can buy it and contribute to an environmental nonprofit or a human rights nonprofit. Um, and then secondarily, well, by way of doing that, we're also helping those nonprofits to expand their programs and have more of an impact, develop stronger programs for the people that they serve. And then, the third part of it is to help the businesses with a new customer acquisition channel, CSR reporting, and but the core business model is an affiliate system. There's other aspects to it, but at the core, it's an affiliate system with nonprofits. that are, the nonprofits are, they have their own links. And then when they share their links out, the nonprofits, then they can drive that traffic to make commissions, and then, yeah. So at first I was interested in working across a larger segment of the SDGs, looking at education or looking at diversity. But I've narrowed it down to what I think are the two most critical points to focus on for our future, for like generations to come. And I think that's the environment and human rights. So that's where, as in terms of when we bring nonprofits onto the system, that's what we're looking for, is kind of a broad interpretation of human rights and environmental nonprofits. And then on the marketplace, I want to build a diverse marketplace and kind of a rich marketplace of businesses that that are part of the network, sort of like an Amazon in a way, but also like a typical affiliate marketplace that you would go to and choose from a bunch of different businesses that you might want to support or you might want to patronize. Yeah. Harsha, are you there? So it seems like Harsha might be gone for now, and I don't know if I'm running or not, but that's the mission, is to give customers a way to make an impact. We have about 10 companies listed on the platform right now, but we're in the development side. We're building out integrations for all the different all the different CMS systems, or custom website builds with custom shopping carts and things like that. We have to build out integrations for each of those. So as we onboard new members, we build out new integrations. Right now we have 4 or 5 integrations, like the standard ones with WooCommerce and Shopify and Wix, Squarespace, and Drupal. And for the nonprofits, we have 7 nonprofits on right now. But I anticipate it being much, much larger than that. And, we only launched back in June. So we've got, a long way to go. And I think we're, in a good place to continue to grow. I think we lost Harsha. I'm going to just check. So there was a question about fundraising. I haven't really fundraised too much for this so far. Really looking to get a little bit more traction before before really going for a raise. I think the startup culture is one to really go out there and try to try to raise a bunch of money for your venture, and that's great. But it's not the only way to grow a business. I think in the beginning, it's important to have some wins and have some good case studies and things like that, and also be able to see a curve in revenue and things like that, um, before I really want to go out and start to approach fundraising much. I think the way there are some kind of angels, of course, and then there's crowd equity, which is kind of another way to go before you start approaching VCs and that sort of thing. And I think that's the area that I would focus more on angels in the beginning. With previous companies, with Dream Drive, we went through a couple of pre-seed rounds, and here in Japan, the cycle for that can be long. I haven't ever done it with a tech company, so this would be a tech company this time, and I think it could be faster than with Dream Drive, which involved vehicles and actual physical conversions of vans and things like that. So it didn't seem as scalable for investors, but I would try to make the company work without too much investment money first, would be my advice. And then, because it's investment money is great, but it's ultimately debt. And if you can be actually profitable with your business, that's the best way to go. And as far as there was a question about having presence in the U.S. and in Japan with this. I think anytime you have a marketplace that can showcase businesses from one country to the other, you have an interesting proposition, to be able to offer exposure to for companies that normally don't have exposure in Japan. Say if they're a U.S. company, and this would be a great way for them to access the market without having to set up an office and really invest in establishing themselves in Japan. So and then it's sort of similar with with Japan, to be able to access foreign stores and shops. And then what kind of ventures are you looking to collaborate with?
Hello. Hi, Andy. I hope I'm audible and I'm visible to you. I'm
Yes,
sorry
I
there
can
was,
see you.
yeah, I'm sorry there was there's been an internet glitches going on in our side.
Oh,
Now that things are
okay.
getting back to normal, the internet is also getting back to normal to its original self. You see.
Yeah,
So,
I understand. No problem.
thank you so very much. My next question to you was how many companies are presently listed, and is there any selection criteria for the same?
Right. Selection criteria. It's sort of in the early phase. In the early phase of this, we are trying to pick companies that have some kind of eco, objective. They're sustainable in some way. Those are the ideal brands to have on at the beginning. Um, but there's another phase of this where I like to bring on global brands. Um, as well, because really when they're on the platform, they're able to, and when people purchase through our platform, then they are supporting um, these causes. So I don't want it to be obviously a greenwashing situation where we bring on unethical stores into the marketplace, um, but it can be broader. But at the beginning, for our brand, we need it to be somewhat clear about what our mission is, both in the nonprofits that we choose and in the stores that are in the marketplace.
Excellent. Now, do you think social entrepreneurs, even when you select the entrepreneurs, do you do any impact assessment on their ventures, or do you think they should themselves do some impact assessments?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I do think that they should be doing impact assessments. I mean, but you have to, when you're very, very small. It's sort of um, not necessary until you
Yeah.
have a little bit of scale. So I don't think it's so important, especially if you're a social impact business of your own and you're already aligned to uh, you know to some corporate social responsibility is baked into your business model. I don't think it's a really big concern earlier on, but a little later, when your company's matured a bit, you'll need the credibility to definitely be able to say that you yourself you're holding yourself to account as well as everyone else.
That's great. Now, even I understand that when you are a small venture, you may not do the impact assessment. So, on what basis do you go about on fundraising and being a social venture? How difficult is it to raise funds?
Mm. Well, it's in Japan, here in Tokyo. There are a few kind of social impact type funds. Nippon Foundation is one um, that I have the opportunity to work with. We haven't raised, and that's because I really want to focus on making the company minimally profitable, and continue developing some good solid case studies before I really go out to approach even angels. I think I'm starting to approach some angels now, um, or we're naturally finding each other. Um, as far as VCs here in Japan, they really need to see. They're really looking for a 10x return at least. So this particular business model is dependent on a member volume um, for it to be highly profitable, and then it does have that kind of scalable potential. But VCs won't look at it until you've got some kind of really good traction here in Tokyo. The
That's
other
it.
thing you can do is equity crowdfunding. That's another option, and there's a couple different funds here well, not funds, but organizations that are doing equity crowdfunding here, and it seems to be that they're able to fund a lot of companies. So that's another option that I might look at, although VCs don't like that. You have CVCs, obviously, but so that's another great route. A friend of mine I was just talking with is funded through Line, and they basically their primary client. So CVCs can be really good if you have a good synergy with them. But yeah.
Excellent. Now you have this venture and you have the experience of US as well as Japan. What is the USP of doing business in both the locations, and what are the pros and cons?
The US way of doing
The
business, is that was your question?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, the US way of doing business. In Japan, I think it's somewhat irrelevant. um, because Japan really has a very very specific business culture that really doesn't care too much about what other I mean, when in Rome you do as you're in Rome, but when you're in Japan you do as in Japan. There, I mean, for me, basically living here as an expat, I can play the expat card a little bit. You can always do that as a foreigner, I think. But the days of kind of the machismo American, I think, at least in my world, are kind of over. I mean, but the value proposition probably for my particular project for Support4Good is being able to give American e-commerce stores, for example, a stage in Japan, a way to showcase and get exposure in Japan to Japanese customers without actually having to set up set up an office here or really invest into doing business in Japan, because the way we list our partners is really through a directory, so they're not actually set up here. So that's a great thing, to be able to access a new market. And the same thing is true for Japan, Japanese companies that might want to access the US market. And there is interest on the consumer level for sure between the two countries, and between, just globally. So yeah.
Wonderful. So that's quite a great learning from both the advanced countries. Though, as you are in business, if you are in Rome, you do business as a Roman does. So that's great to learn from you. Now, at Support for Good, what kind of ventures are you looking to collaborate with? And you already mentioned about the investors, but any things in particular that you look when you take investment from any company, or when you would take investment from any company?
You know, I haven't been with none of the startups that I've worked with so far. I haven't been in the position to say no a lot to the money. But I think as far as like a lead investor, we would definitely want a lead investor to be aligned with social impact, and kind of oriented towards the a different return. Even if we could do a 20x return, I wouldn't want my lead investor for a business that's focused on doing good to have their primary motivation being that return on their investment. I would want them to have some personal or business investment in the intangibles and in the positive impact of the project as well. and then you just, and then there's different kinds of money. There's obviously ones that are going to be highly involved. For myself, I wouldn't want too hands-on of a fund to be involved with the project and have a large percentage of equity, if I can help it, because I think that's you give up a lot of autonomy and ability to steer the ship if you partner with the wrong capital. So
Glad to learn this from you. Now, my last but not the least question. IICSR is a dedicated institution for building responsible business leadership. What is the knowledge gap you see in Japan to achieve this?
yeah, it's I think there's been kind of a grappling of acronyms, of trying to find the new acronyms to describe what corporate social sustainability responsibility is about. CSR in Japan, I think 10 years ago was maybe misinterpreted as being really about taking care of the workers, like having um, services for the employees, making sure, for example, um, um, uh, leave for pregnancy and things like that would be, and that is a part of CSR, but CSR has a much greater scope than that. And I think Japan, is an ancient culture, so it has its own way of doing things, and they're trying very hard. We're trying very hard here to internalize SDGs now. So right now there's like advertisements for SDGs everywhere you look. There's like trains that have vinyl wrap, of SDGs on like 20 trains. So that's a lot of waste to wrap the trains that way, to get the word of SDGs out. But people are trying to learn it and trying to internalize it, and then find a way to fit it in with the existing cultural kind of rules and logic that has gotten Japan to where it is today. So, but I think even though Japan is sometimes like with the recent ocean agreement signed by the G7, and the US and Japan both sat out on that, for like ocean trash, and it had to do with single-use plastics and things like that. Even though it seems like they sit out on things sometimes, the culture itself is already sort of conservation minded, and people, I think, on average produce less waste than a lot of other countries of a similar GDP. So the important thing is that businesses see the value in this for themselves, because most businesses are still oriented toward the bottom line fundamentally, and I mean, you have to be, but at the same time they have to see, leadership in general needs to be able to see 3 or 4 generations out and imagine what their great grandchildren, what kind of world their great grandchildren will be living in if they make this policy decision, or if they pursue this business strategy. So I think cultivating a long view and contemplating several generations into the future is the best encouragement for like being able to think about these issues, and incorporate them into planning and policy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. Any final message to all our viewers who are watching us right now and who would watch the recorded sessions?
I say if you have an idea, just stick with it. Stick with it, and don't give up if you believe in it, and especially if you can make a difference in your community, you know, in your country, in the world, you know, and just grow a thick armored skin to be able to take whatever comes as you make your way to your goal. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy, for taking time from your schedule and addressing all our viewers. And we highly appreciate and wish you all the best for your ventures.
Thank you very much, Harsha, and thank you. I really appreciate it. It's great to be on.
Thank you. Thank you.